The Tar Heels begin their season-defining four-game stretch today against Saint Bonaventure. The key, gotta lock in defensively.
This is David Noel, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Network, now the number one sports podcast network there is. Thanks for making us your first listener or watch to get your Tuesday going the right way. Special shout out to all of you everydayers who are here with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you're going to get $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. Download it and get started today. So North Carolina today does tip off this year's MTE during Feast Week, which is the Fort Myers tip-off. Just a two-game event. We already know who the two opponents are. It's Saint Bonaventure today. It's Michigan State on Thursday on Thanksgiving. To that point, there's another episode coming out today, a crossover between myself and the great host of Locked On Sparty, Matt Sheehan. I'm going to link that right up there in the corner for all of those of you who are watching on YouTube to watch. If you're listening, you can just find it right above or below this episode in the podcast feed. So here's what we're going to look at on the show today. With Carolina beginning this critical game stretch, how are they going to perform? I did some polls. I'm excited to share those with you, the results of it with you, and how I think they will do. I believe that defense is going to be critical. We'll talk about that. Then we will get our four corners preview for this game. Big part of that is going to be very interesting to see how Carolina can once again use their size all to their advantage. And then finally on the episode today, we're going to get to know the Bonnies a little bit and make predictions for the game. By the way, did you happen to see what happened in Maui, Hawaii yesterday? I don't know, maybe the first game of the event. You should go check it out if you didn't. It's wild. It's the craziest thing. It was the first game all season where an unranked team upset a ranked team. Crazy stuff. My favorite comment is Brandon Mayberry, who's one of our guys here on the show that listens regular. Shouts to Brandon. This took the cake. He said, "Hey, Isaac, I wonder how Will Wade's going to blame Hubert for this one." Brandon Mayberry, you win the day, sir. That was hilarious, and I laughed for a long time. I laughed a really long time with that one. Okay, here we go. Let's get into it. How is North Carolina going to fare in the four-game stretch that starts today? Again, this is Saint Bonaventure. This is Michigan State, both in the Fort Myers tip-off. Then it's at Kentucky next week for the ACC SEC Challenge. And then finally returning back home the next Sunday to face Georgetown on the front half of a home-and-home, which will be the return game next year up in D.C. That four-game stretch, on paper at least, is the single most difficult stretch of the non-conference portion of the schedule. Obviously, the Kansas game, that was huge. Obviously, the Ohio State game at the CBS Sports Classic, that's going to be huge. But in totality, these four games are going to define it. Because Michigan State, Kentucky, boy, those are going to be difficult. But let's not miss that Saint Bonaventure is no bye game, and Georgetown on the back end is no bye game. Georgetown is much improved, thank you very much. So, my thought going into this is that Carolina, that 3-1 was what most people would say. And sure enough, that's what most people said. I did a poll on Discord. I did a poll on YouTube, which always gets the most votes, by the way. I mean, literally 600, 700, 800 votes often on our YouTube polls. I love it. I love how engaged all of you are in the YouTube community. That's great stuff there. And then we had about 200-300 votes on Twitter as well. For the Discord vote, 3-1 got 53% of the vote, followed by 4-0 getting 25% and 2-2 getting 22%. On YouTube, 3-1 got 55%, 4-0 got 23%, 2-2 got 20%, and then on below that. Twitter, Same thing. 3-1 got 51% of the vote, but it was flip-flopped. 2-2 was second at 25%, and then 4-0 was third at 21.4%. None of that surprised me, honestly. I assumed that 3-1 would win the day everywhere, and it got just over 50% on all three platforms. On the more Tar Heel specific centric places, 4-0 was the second leading vote getter, both on Discord and the YouTube community, which is going to be mostly Tar Heels fans because it's subscribers that are mostly going to see that. And Twitter, which is kind of out there for everybody. Obviously, because it's my Twitter feed, it's going to be more Tar Heels fans than anybody else. But you also saw a good amount of other people diving in. And so that's why I think 2-2 won the day in second place anyway for that one. But it's some of the comments that I thought were really interesting. For example, Abraham Clafter on YouTube said, if we have Trimble, then anything is possible. Because he is out, I'm afraid we go 2-2. I would love to have just one loss on the other side of this gauntlet, though. And I think there's something about that. Carolina is going to have to be very tough against Michigan State and obviously Kentucky in Rupp as well. And a veteran Seth Trimble helps you do that so much more capably than otherwise you would. So that's a thing there. We had all sorts of good comments. Another one on YouTube came from Connell ROC Raymond. I don't know where all the division of letters is there, but said, I think we have a very sobering stretch coming up. The Bonnies won't be an easy win, but I'm confident they're still. I don't see us beating the Spartans. They look excellent, and 1-1 in the Kentucky-Georgetown run would be acceptable. So I believe this would still be 2-2, but it's the 1-1 in the Kentucky-Georgetown run, yes, so long as the loss is at Kentucky, right? Because it doesn't just matter wins and losses. It matters who those wins and losses are to. If you lose to Georgetown at home, that's like, yes, Georgia improved, but still not a good look. And the Spartans game on Thursday, much more difficult than we initially thought it would be. Lots of other great comments. A lot of people assuming that Carolina's 3-1 is either a loss to Michigan State or Kentucky. But again, you cannot overlook Saint Bonaventure today. And that is where I want to ultimately get this after that, looking through those polls. Regardless of your answer, anywhere from 4-0 to 0-4, anything in between, none of it matters if you don't focus in and start today with Saint Bonaventure, because you overlooked this team at your own risk. Yes, they are outside the top 100 at KenPom, but it's basketball. It's a feast week tournament. Anything could happen. So don't get all high and mighty on this thing and then you get beat. And to me, the key for this is all about North Carolina's defense continuing to lock in. The offense is still trying to find their way a little bit, trying to find the three-point shooting, trying to continue to get Luka Bogavac worked in, trying to figure out who they are without Seth Trimble's athleticism, for example. But if the defense can continue to come along right now, even without Seth Trimble, that is something that you can rely on game in and game out to be sustained. And when you look at the numbers of this thing, North Carolina's defense right now, as I record, because defense both at Torvik and KenPom change as each game finishes. So right now, as I record, Carolina is 22nd in defensive efficiency at KenPom, 16th at Torvik. And then some of the other numbers that are astounding. I mentioned this last week, but I want to make sure you remember it. Right now, North Carolina is literally first in the nation in 2-point field goal defense, meaning of every 2-point shot, Carolina has the best defense in the nation of any other team against 2-pointers right now. So obviously that would not include free throws and 3-pointers. Does that make sense? Carolina is holding opponents. I just lost the number on it. Let me come back to it. 34.2% from 2-point range. That is something impressive. It's their athleticism. It's their size, their length, their movement. And keep in mind, they haven't had Seth Trimble for 3 of their 5 games. So it's not just like, oh man, it's going to be an issue without Seth. Now, that gets much more difficult in this 4-game stretch, but still, it is a reality. Another wildly elite number where Carolina is top 5 is an effective field goal percentage, where Carolina is 4th in the nation at 38.8%. Basically, what effective field goal percentage does is try to allow for the more value that you get from a 3-point shot. And Carolina's three-point defense is 30.5%, 102nd in the nation. So it's not as strong as the two-point defense. But even when factored in for that three-point reality, Carolina is fourth in the nation in effective field goal percentage. And then you look at the rim protection they're getting. They are 31st nationally in block percentage right now, which is really encouraging. Yeah, actually, it's bumped up literally in real time. I just looked at it up to 30th as somebody fell behind them is what that means. And so Carolina's defense is doing it. And again, that is going to travel game in and game out. Got to continue to prove it. And that starts tonight against Saint Bonaventure, or I guess I should say continues against Saint Bonaventure, but it starts in terms of making an impression on this Fort Myers event and on this 4-game stretch in totality. So I want to focus in more specifically on what Carolina needs to do tonight against Saint Bonaventure. That's where we're going to go next with the Four Corners preview. Carolina's front court has been electric, and they have to continue to do so. That's where we'll start. Coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, y'all, the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or maybe you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to a fourth quarter comeback, which happens seemingly in every NBA game, or who's going to do anything in between that. Plus, what's cool is you can combine any of these live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout to make your day nice. All of this keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. As you look at the ACC regular season championship odds, Duke and Louisville still lead the way at first and second, plus 125, plus 190. Carolina is third at plus 1,000, followed by NC State and Clemson, who are both at plus 1,200. If you look at the Wooden Award odds for the National Player of the Year, Caleb Wilson is tied for eighth at plus 2,200. If you think that's good, go get in on that action or anything else, because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch of the day, and thank you for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network there is. It's time for our Four Corners preview for Carolina versus Saint Bonaventure. And then after that, we'll go ahead and get you ready to get to know the Bonnies a little bit and what to expect from them. But here, you'll learn a little bit about them as we go through our Four Corners preview. Number one, Carolina's front court needs to keep front courting, is how I wrote it in my notes. They have been so good. And what a beautiful thing it is after everything we went through last year. We walked last year so that we could run now. Or maybe you could even say Carolina baby crawled last year so they can run now. St. Bonaventure starting five. 5'11", 6'2", 6'3", 6'8", 6'10". And I know I said front court, and I just gave you the size of all five starters. But when you look at the average height, North Carolina is fourth in the nation. St. Bonaventure is 319th. Yeah. But again, let me break it down by position now. Point guard, 5'11", size advantage, Kyan Evans at 6'2". Shooting guard, 6'2", size advantage, Luka Bogavac, 6'5". I'm going to skip the three position. 6'4", at the forward position, the power forward, 6'8", that's Caleb Wilson. Although Carolina has been listing Jarin as the 4 and Caleb as the 3, but whatever. At the 5 position, 6'10", Henri Veesaar, 7 foot. Let me go back to small forward, the 3 position. The starter for St. Bonaventure at the 3 is 6 foot 3 inches tall. Jarin Stevenson is 6'10", or even if you say Caleb Wilson is 6'10". So particular advantage here is whomever 6'3" Caden Charles is guarding at the small forward position between Jarin or Caleb Wilson, that dude has to cook. And it's not just about Caleb or Jarin, it's about his teammates recognizing and realizing that mismatch and making a concerted effort to get him the ball. Whether that's driving, whether that's posting up, whatever it is, Carolina has to take advantage of that mismatch all game long. Force Saint Bonaventure to make a change to their personnel because Carolina is exposing it to that level. That's what I'm looking for. Preview point number 2. This is going to be a great test on the defensive glass. And you might be like, Isaac, what are you talking about? You just told me St. Bonaventure's small. You just told me they're 319th in the nation in average height. Yes, they are. And they are not a great rebounding team in totality, but you know what they are is an elite, often at least early in the season. They, St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies, are 6th in the nation, not in the A10, not amongst mid-majors, of entirety of Division I. They are 6th with an offensive rebounding percentage of 44%. They're bringing in 14.6 offensive rebounds a game, which is 38th in the nation. Carolina cannot look at this and say, oh, it's St. Bonaventure, they short, we got, whatever. That happened to Carolina a few games. I can't remember which game it was. It might have even been the Navy game, where Carolina at that point was listed as 6th in the nation in average height. Navy was outside the 300s, same thing here. And it was the smallest rebounding margin Carolina had all season. So critically here, point number 2, Carolina has to finish defensive, have a great defensive possession, finish it with a rebound. Do not let St. Bonaventure going on the offensive glass, which leads to more possessions for them, which leads to more shots, which leads to second chance points and a better chance that they can spring this upset. And we know this North Carolina team is trying to figure out how can we defensive rebound even more capably, especially with our best rebounding guard, Seth Trimble, on the bench right now. So it's about Jarin Stevenson. It's about Henri Veesaar. It's about Caleb Wilson all sticking their nose in. It's about Luka doing that. It's about Kyan. It's about Jonathan Powell. The whole team has to chip in and help on the defensive glass. Don't let them get an advantage with one of the few advantages they seem to have in this game. Number 3 in our Four Corners preview, can Carolina force tempo? I ask that question because the Tar Heels are 56th in the nation in adjusted tempo, averaging 72.6 possessions per 40 minutes. That's a pretty fast rate. On the other hand, St. Bonaventure's out here. We're not talking Virginia level, but outside the top 300. They are 309th in adjusted tempo at 67.7 possessions per 40 minutes. We often say in basketball, it's much easier to slow somebody down than to speed somebody up that doesn't want to be sped up. So North Carolina is going to have to make a concerted effort to get out and go and run, to pitch ahead. And then on the defensive side of things, try to speed up St. Bonaventure. Use some full court press, use some traps, whatever it is to speed up the game. Try to get them out of their rhythm where they forget, hey, we like to play deliberately, and get them going at Carolina's tempo. That's a key factor. And fourth and finally, in the Four Corners preview for this game, is blocks. Once again, despite North Carolina's size advantage, they've got to watch out for blocked shots. St. Bonaventure is 20th in the nation with 5.8 blocks per game, and they're 19th in the nation in defensive block percentage at 16.8%, meaning they get a block on 16.8% of their opponent's shots. That's really good. By the way, on the other side of it, St. Bonaventure is avoiding blocks really well. They are getting blocked on just 4.2% of their shots, which is 6th nationally. So they're really good at blocking shots, and they're really good at avoiding having theirs blocked. Carolina has to do the early work on both sides of the ball to make sure that even if they're not blocking shots, that they are using their height and length to make St. Bonaventure think twice about what they're doing. They've got to make sure on the other end that they're staying away from the shot blockers, getting into body and doing things like that. Now, to be fair, I'll talk about the team St. Bonaventure's played in just a little bit. They have not seen a team the caliber or athleticism or size of North Carolina. So that certainly could be factoring into every number that I'm saying right now, and it could just be a bloodbath. I get that. But critically, you can't just assume like, oh, we're going to go in and walk all over these dudes because we're bigger and we're North Carolina. You got to go in, locked in and loaded, and be ready to rock and roll. Don't look ahead to Michigan State. Don't look ahead to Kentucky or Turkey or anything else. Be ready for the Bonnies tonight and make Adrian Wojnarowski wish he could go back and work for ESPN instead of being the GM for this team. So there you go. There's the Four Corners preview. What we're going to do next is get to know the Bonnies a little bit, what they've done this season, their personnel, and then we're going to get to my game predictions. I'll give that to you all coming up in just a second. All right, here we go. North Carolina, Saint Bonaventure today, Tuesday, November 25th, down in Fort Myers, Florida at the Fort Myers Tip-Off Suncoast Credit Union Arena. North Carolina, Saint Bonaventure's one game. The other game today, interestingly enough, not only Michigan State, but they're playing ECU, who Carolina has in non-conference play later on this December, I believe it is. I think it's mid-December. I don't have it in the top of my head right now. This game is at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's on FS1, not ESPN, so make sure you catch that. The FanDuel line, it might actually be out by this point. It wasn't when I first put my notes together, but the KenPom line has Carolina favored by 11 points. Let's look really quick. Come with me here, and we'll see in real time if FanDuel has finally put up the line for this game. It's taken a second, spinning its wheels. Okay, here we go. Tuesday, 12 p.m., Tuesday, 5. Carolina by 10.5 at FanDuel. So right in that same area as KenPom. So there you go. There's the line. There's the details of this game. Series record. These teams have played each other once previously, with Carolina winning on March 15th, 1968, 91-72. Interestingly enough, that game was at Reynolds Coliseum in Raleigh. It was during the NCAA tournament, which you probably could have guessed by the fact that it was on March 15th. The head coach of Saint Bonaventure is Mark Schmidt, who's been there for a long, long time, since the 07-08 season. Congrats to Mark Schmidt, man. In this profession, to be that long time, I mean, nearly 2 decades at this point. That is something to be said. So very well done, Mark Schmidt. Congrats to you on all that success. Preseason, Saint Bonaventure was picked 8th out of the 14 teams in the A10. Right now, they're 117th at KenPom, 107th in offensive efficiency, 141 at D. Very similar numbers at Torvik. They're 123rd right now overall, 132nd at offense, 125 at defense. So far, Saint Bonaventure is 5-0, just like the Tar Heels are. But here are their wins. Bradley, Siena, Youngstown State, Romo, not Tony, but Robert Morris, and Canisius. The highest ranked team that they've played, at least per KenPom's numbers, is 136th. So again, while Carolina hasn't played a murderer's row this year, 4 of their 5 have been essentially bye games, and Kansas, the other team. But obviously, Carolina's schedule has been much more difficult than has been St. Bonaventure's. Again, haven't lost yet. They're undefeated, and that's not nothing. Their usual starters, they're bringing DeSante Bowen, who is preseason second team All A10. They've got Caden Charles, who plays the small forward that I talked about, 6'3", that either Jarin Stevenson or Caleb Wilson needs to go at consistently. Joe Grahavic, which is a rad name. And then we get to the guys that are kind of leading the way. Frank Mitchell is averaging 16 and 10.6, 16 points, 10.6 rebounds. That 10.6 rebounds leads the A10 right now. And then leading scorer, Daryl Simmons, is coming in at 18.6 a game. So you got to contend with multiple guys that are plus 15 points a game. Again, part of why I said Carolina's got to lock in defensively in this game. So be ready for that. The depth, they're playing 8 total guys right now are getting 10-plus minutes a game. The other 3 that are doing that coming off the bench are Amare Marshall, Andrew Osasui, and Daniel Egbuniwe, right? And so those are the guys you're looking at coming off the bench. As I look at this thing, I want to respect St. Bonaventure. I recognize that this is a proud program. I recognize I joked about Adrian Wojnarowski, but it's a team that's trying to do things at a really high level. And they're undefeated. But they're just not, quite frankly, they're not the caliber that North Carolina is. And sometimes you put your hands up and you say, look, it is what it is with stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so as we think about that, I'm going to take Carolina both to win and to cover this game. I think because of what happened in the Navy game, let's not forget about that a week ago to the day where Carolina had a 24-point lead with 4 minutes and 44 seconds to go. Yeah, that's burned in my brain. Gave up that 15-0 run and then had to squeak it out by 12. But literally, the lead they had with 4+ minutes left was cut in half. This team is I believe that Hubert Davis has their attention, is how I'll say it. They are not going to be looking around. They're not going to be blah, 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 blah. There's no vacation mode. This is a business trip. And you learn a lot about a team in these moments. Are they ready to lock in? Are they ready to not look ahead to Michigan State on Thursday? Are they ready to not look ahead to the beach day if they're going to get that or anything like that? Are they locked in for one another? I'm very interested to see that. Let's remember that, Carolina very easily could be looking ahead to Michigan State. They lost to them in an MTE last year in Maui. They had that Elliott Cadeau layup, basically wins the game. That would have put Carolina up 1 with like 20 seconds to go. But you can't. And the good news is only one member of this team played significant minutes in that game, and it was the guy that hit the three-pointer to send it to overtime, who's going to be sitting on the bench in street clothes, and that's Seth Trimble. Nobody else that's going to play in this game played significant minutes in that Michigan State game. So I'm ultimately not too worried about that, but you got to lock in today. So the line, again, 10.5 at FanDuel, 11 at KenPom. I'm going to go with Carolina to win and cover. Give me Tar Heels because of that slower pace of Saint Bonaventure. Carolina 75, Saint Bonaventure 60. Carolina keeps it rolling. The defense continues to defense. Another massive Caleb Wilson game, another massive Henri Veesaar game. And again, I'm curious to see if Jarin Stevenson can make some noise at 3 with having a size mismatch in a big, big way. All right, there you go, guys. Again, a reminder, don't forget to check out the crossover episode with Matt Sheehan of Locked on Spartans today. That's going to come out. This one's out at the normal time. I've set that one to come out around lunchtime on the East Coast, so be on the lookout for that. All right, guys, can't wait. We will be live post-game tonight. Make sure you tune in with me so we can celebrate if Carolina wins or have our therapy session for the first loss of the season. Please, dear goodness, don't let that be the reality. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, do it right now so you don't miss a second of Locked on Tar Heels. If you haven't joined the Locked on Tar Heels Discord, that link's in the show notes, free to you. If you haven't joined the Locked on Tar Heels Insider Group, man, that's a great place where you can go next level with the show, have one-on-one conversations with me, and free access to everything I do statistically. You don't want to miss out on that. All right, guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but actually, I said tomorrow, tonight after the game, but until then, peace.